Grace and peace be with you all this evening. My name is Reverend Katie Miller. I'm the minister here at the United Church of Christ. It is my honor to welcome you into this space of remembering. Mary's hope for this is that it's rather informal, so feel free to get up, move around. The restroom is through that door there, so if you need that, go ahead. But make yourself at home as we enter into this time of remembering Joe. One of my earlier memories of coming to this church was a service that I think Stella was involved in or something, but Joe came, and afterwards he shook my hand and he said, "Pretty good for a Protestant," which I took as very high praise. And in light of that, this is also to say the official service is tomorrow over at St. Agnes. Tonight is a night of telling stories and remembering and singing songs, all of the things that Joe loved dearly. So as we enter into this time together, I invite you just to join me in a moment in a space of prayer as we start our time. Holy God, whose ways are not our ways and whose thoughts are not our thoughts, heal our wounded hearts made heavy by grief and remind us that we are not alone, not ever. Through tears and our emptiness, assure us again that ear has not heard, nor eye seen, nor human imagination envisioned what you have prepared for those who love you through Jesus Christ, our risen Savior. Amen. Let us join in singing a song together. That's what Joe loved to do, and that's a good thing to do tonight. Our first one is "Be Still My Soul," which is number 488 in your hymnals. I invite you to join me in the 23rd Psalm that's printed in the bulletin. Hopefully you got when you walked in. I'll read the plain text, you read the bold. The Lord is my shepherd, I shall not want. He makes me lie down in green pastures. He leads me beside still waters. He restores my soul. He leads me in right paths for his name. Even though I walk through the darkest valley, I fear no evil, for you are with me. Your staff. You prepare a table before me in the presence of my enemies. Surely goodness and mercy shall follow me all the days of my life, and I shall dwell in the house of the Lord my whole life long. Amen. Quick reading as requested by Mary in honor of Joe, a familiar one embroidered in places and celebrated and remembered because it frames our lives so very well. This is from Ecclesiastes. There is a time for everything and a season for every activity under the heavens. A time to be born and a time to die. A time to plant and a time to uproot. A time to kill and a time to heal. A time to tear down and a time to build, a time to weep and a time to laugh, a time to mourn and a time to dance, a time to scatter stones and a time to gather them, a time to embrace and a time to refrain from embracing, a time to search and a time to give up, a time to keep and a time to throw away, a time to tear and a time to mend, a time to be silent and a time to speak, a time to love and a time to hate, a time for war and a time for peace. The word of God. Thanks be to God. I invite you to join me in another hymn, Stars and Planets Flung in Orbit, number 567. Let us sing together. So there's this idea that I think is great, and it is that it is entirely possible that God created humans because God loves stories. I love that. I think it's an important idea, and that's what we're here to do today, is to celebrate the stories and the songs and the life of Joe. And so to start that off with, I'm going to read the official story, which you can find printed in here as well. And then we'll get to the fun stories that I'm sure you all have of Joe. Joe Edelen of Vermillion, South Dakota, passed away with his family by his side on Thanksgiving Day at Sanford USD Medical Center in Sioux Falls following recent brain surgery. There will be a visitation on Monday here at the UCC. There will be time for memories of Joe at this service, and then the Mass will be held at St. Agnes Catholic Church in Vermillion on Tuesday, December 10th, beginning at 10 a.m. with the Rosary, followed by greeting of the family and remarks by friends and family. The Mass will begin at 11 with lunch to follow. Joe was born in Belleville, Illinois, to Joseph Ruey Edelen and Marilyn Jane Edelen on September 5th, 1944. His father was in the Army Air Corps at the time, and the family left for Japan. They lived in many different places in the world. Joe attended high school in South Carolina, Wiesbaden, Germany? Wiesbaden? Oh, I was close. My German pronunciation is not great. And Ankara, Turkey, before his father's last duty station at San Antonio, Texas, where Joe graduated from Central Catholic High School in 1962. He enrolled at St. Mary's College in Kentucky with the intention of becoming a priest, graduating in 1966. Joe missed his family and traveled back to San Antonio, where he enrolled at St. Mary's University and received a BA in history in 1967. He then pursued graduate studies in library science at Catholic University of America in Washington, D.C., where he received an MA in library science in 1968. While working at the library reference desk at Trinity University in San Antonio, he met Mary while she was doing graduate work. In 1967, Joe traveled to Vermillion to propose. There's a saying, if he wanted to, he would. That's Joe. Mary's mother, who taught mathematics at USD, introduced him to the director of the USD library, where he offered him a job on the spot to be a cataloger. Joe spent 42 years at USD, retiring in 2010 as head of technical services. Joe and Mary were married at the First Congregational Church, now the United Church of Christ Congregational, on June 8, 1968, with the approval of the South Dakota Catholic bishop. If you need proof, their marriage certificate is right there. It happened. It was the first wedding to take place in a Protestant church, with a Catholic priest and a Protestant minister presiding. Joe had many passions. He learned to farm from his father-in-law, which he did for many years. He enjoyed pheasant hunting, boating on the Missouri River, snowmobiling at Tugwatty Mountain Lodge in western Wyoming in the Black Hills, and spending time at the family cabin in the Black Hills. He and Mary liked to see the world. They camped all over the country and traveled to Alaska, Iceland, Singapore, Japan, England, Germany, Italy, and Greece. When at home, they could be found at USD athletic events almost any day of the week. How pumped would he be with the football season? His religion was unfailing and a part of his daily life. He sang and cantored at St. Agnes and sang with the Sacred Heart Choir in Yankton. His faith was his comfort and his guide in everything he did. Joe had a heart for service. He was the longest living member of the Vermillion Rotary Club, where he led the singing. He served as president of the South Dakota Library Association, as president and executive secretary of the Mountain Plains Library Association for many years. He planned annual meetings in the western United States. Joe had a head for numbers and helped behind the scenes at Louie's Carpet Cleaning in Vermillion. While he served his community in innumerable ways, the most important legacy Joe will leave is devotion to family. Joe taught his children that family is always the priority. He never failed to show up for those he loved. His kids and grandkids could always count on seeing his face in the crowd at their activities. Joe took the time to teach his children and grandchildren how to be self-sufficient, how to repair broken things, and learn more about the world around them. He brought several of his younger brothers to Vermillion in the summers to spend time with them and further their family connection while teaching them about farming and life. As the eldest of 10 children, Joe kept a close connection with his extended family despite the distance. He rarely missed a family event. Joe is survived by his loving wife, Mary, of 56 years, daughter Audra, son Jared, and daughter-in-law Alicia of Vermillion. He was grandpa to Archer, Charlie, Benjamin, and Lila of Sioux Falls, and Oscar and Stella of Vermillion. He is also survived by 7 brothers and 1 sister: Greg, Lauren, Nancy, Doug, Reverend Thomas Edelen, John, Gianella, Philip, Claire, Chris, Joan, Paul, Nancy, Richard, Dr. Rachel, Deborah Blanton, and brother-in-law Kent Lane of Arkansas. Joe was preceded in death by son Anthony, parents Joseph and Marilyn Edelen, sister Mary Lane, and nephew Robert. Joe was a researcher at heart and believed in the power of knowledge. He made the lasting gift of donating his body to the USD Sanford School of Medicine in Vermillion. What a life, lived fully and lived well. We give thanks tonight for the stories of Joe Edelen and all that made up his life here, and let us continue celebrating them. Amen. Joe learned, right? Is that correct? Yeah, that was a song Joe, the first one he did with you, is that correct? Yep. Thank you, that was beautiful. We're gonna enter into a time of sharing eulogies and stories. This is the mic. It goes up and down if you need it to. You can also just take the mic out and rock star it across the way if you'd like. But it's an open mic, so feel free to come forward and share stories and again, mill around, look at pictures. You're welcome to do that.
I'm going to rock star it for a second. Paul, that was amazing. I could see my dad smiling down on this service, hearing that. Truly moving music. Thank you, Gretchen, as well, for the wonderful music. My dad convinced me in college. I did not like singing. I was in the choir, growing up because I kind of had to be. But he said, Jared, you should take a voice lesson. And so I took a 1-hour credit voice lesson at college. And I couldn't believe it, but I got up in front of 300 people and sung a song that's not like a church song where you get to sing the notes that the piano plays. You have to sing your own notes, and that's really hard. But anyway, I thought about that as you were singing, and it was truly moving. Thank you. Clay, you're right, this is really hard. For those that don't know me, and there aren't many in this room that don't know me, it was nice to see everybody at the service, and our family thanks you for coming. It's truly a blessing to celebrate my dad's life. I think of funerals typically as very sad, and they are sad, but it's more fulfilling to celebrate a full life that my dad lived. He grew up in many places around the world, as you heard in his obituary. He didn't really have a place to call home until he met my mom, and they moved to Vermillion, and this was his home, his real home. He called San Antonio his home because that's where his parents lived, but he didn't spend a lot of time there. He moved here in 1968, and Vermillion in South Dakota was his home and his community. And he loved this city, he loved this state, and that was truly wonderful. And growing up in Vermillion with my grandma across the street was a really special blessing. He taught me the value and honor in loving your in-laws, treating them with dignity and integrity. And I got to see him do that with Graham so often, and it was a lifelong lesson that he taught without teaching it. He lived by action. I think, Clay, you did this too, but I'm not really going to go off script. It's easier to... I'm going to go off script, sorry. I want to share a little bit about the way we were raised as kids. There's no playbook for all you young parents out there. And for you old parents, you know that when you had your kids, there was no playbook for how to raise your kids. It's you kind of just do what you think is right. My parents exposed us to lots of different things. In the summers, we went camping, we went hiking, we did things around Vermillion. And in the winters, my dad's favorite pastime was snowmobiling. In fact, as we were looking through pictures last night, I don't know, half of them were of the mountains. It was pretty telling of what his passion was. He and my mom first ventured out to Wyoming. I'm not sure how he convinced his wife to go to Wyoming snowmobiling, but they did, and they met a wonderful couple out there that invited them back. And for over 30 years, they together snowmobiled in Wyoming, which for some of you that have been there with him, it's not a Sunday walk in the park. It's pretty big mountains, and I got the joy of going there when I was 14 and enjoying that with my mom for another 13 years. And my dad stopped going, what did we figure, about 7 years ago or so. And he retired his blue onesie snowmobile outfit one day. He said, "This is it, I'm hanging it up." that was a pretty neat memory. I've gotten the honor to continue that tradition with my family as well, and it's fun to invite people into that exciting way to see nature in a way that most people don't get the opportunity to. My dad once joked that if he could, he would want to be buried on his snowmobile. And I didn't think that was probably going to happen, but it showed his love for that sport and all the memories we had with family that came and enjoyed those trips. When I think about my dad's life, 3 words came to my mind: faith, family, and community. My dad was a deeply faithful man. He loved his faith. He grew up in a very deeply faithful family, many of whom are here filling the pews. It's amazing to see everybody. I enjoy seeing you more at family reunions than funerals, but thank you for coming. Thank you to all the friends for coming as well. You are the community that he experienced in this town. His family was very important to him. For many a summer, he brought his brothers up to Vermillion to work at his farm. That was his second job. His first job was at the university, but in his spare time, he farmed. And he gave his siblings an opportunity to come to South Dakota to earn some money. And he taught what I just learned last night from my Uncle Philip, that he taught them about compound interest, which is a pretty cool concept that I do on a daily basis. But he said, your dad would pay us, but then he would say, well, if you don't want to take the money, I'll keep it and I'll pay you interest on it. And then the next month you can earn interest on the interest. And when you leave, you'll have more money than you thought you had. And I think it was one way of teaching a lesson without actually telling him what the lesson was. And it was a pretty cool memory of my dad. When I think about community, I think about all the experiences he had in Vermillion as a person of this community, not just living in it, but impacting it in the way that he thought was special. Music was a big part of his way of giving back to the community, and through his church, he was part of the choir and really enjoyed that, felt fulfilled by singing. I think it was, as Paul, you can probably imagine, that was, as you know deeply, it was part of his life. So faith, family, and community were 3 things that really rang true with my dad. Lastly, I want you all to lift up his life in your prayers and thoughts, and celebrate him and his family and yourselves. I think a big part of life is the blessing we all have of the days we have on this earth, and remembering the impact that we can make as individuals while we're here. And it's fun to remember the impact my dad had on all of us here in this room. Thank you.
Okay, my name is Audra. I am their eldest daughter. So my brother had a script. I don't have a script, so I'm just going off the fly, like I tend to. Okay, I wanted to say thank you, especially to our family, all of our extended family, and all of our friends who are here to celebrate the life of my dad. I don't know if I'm going to be able to do this, so I'm going to try. We appreciate all of you guys. Like my brother said, his faith, family, and community were very, very important to him. You could see him at USD football games, basketball games, volleyball games, and anything related to USD. Whether it was working in the library or the community, Rotary, St. Agnes, whatever it is, volunteering, whatever, you all helped him in a way that made him who he is. So thank you. We appreciate that, and we love all of our family. Thank you all for being here, friends. Paul, that was amazing. That was absolutely amazing. Dad is here with us, and he is very proud of you. So thank you. We appreciate everybody for coming from afar, from here, wherever, but we appreciate it greatly. It means a lot to us to support us and all of our family as well and friends. I want to tell a little story. When I was about 5, I think, maybe 6, my dad got me on the tractor. I didn't know how to drive at that time, obviously, but we were out on the tractor, and he's like, oh, you can drive. I'm like, how can I reach the pedals? Oh, he's like, I'll do that for you. I'm like, okay. So I sat in his lap on the tractor. I'm like, Dad, my ears are hurting. He's like, well, that's part of farming. Your ears hurt. Like, I was 5 or 6, I don't remember. But he's like, well, we're just going to go down these rows and these rows, and then we'll be done. I'm like, okay. Then I'm like, can I get off this thing now? No, we have to go down there and come back and go down this way. I'm like, fine. So we did that, but it just shows that how much he loved his family. And there was times when we were all in high school that we would all be in activities, and maybe one parent would have to go to one activity and the other parent would have to go to the other activity. But both of our parents supported us all the way through high school, all the way through college. They went through every football game with you, pretty much, when you played at USD, Jared. But my parents supported us, all 3 of us, no matter what we did. And that is the love of my dad, supporting our family and everybody else he loved. And that's it. I don't have anything.
I'm Phil, one of the 7 brothers of Joe. I'm in the middle of the group. Anyway, I brought my emotional support sister with me to get me through this. And I'm going to register her so she can travel with me then. Anyway, Jared and Audra said, I think what everybody knows, but Joe started out, the number 1 of 10, and I can't imagine what it was like for him running her, and mommy or daddy saying, okay, Joe, now you got Philip, John, and Chris today, and we'll take care of these 2. But that had to be something that developed his upbringing and what made him such a great man. But we're here to celebrate a great, great man in Joe. But they talked about, and you heard it in the words, and then Jared said, he brought some of us up here to work for him, and talk about the work ethic that he gave to his 3 children. And I remember working up here. Sometimes I'd run out to Meckling or drive out to Meckling, but I knew that when I got up in the morning, before the sun got up, Joe was already up working. And when I went to bed after the sun was long gone, and that was late summers here in the up north, that Joe was still up working. I mean, it's just the work ethic that he had. And talked about the compound interest. Joe worked us hard, he paid us good, and he worked harder than we did. And those are lessons that we learned and we got from him. But then Joe, I was a pilot in the Air Force, and Joe is the only person that I know that wanted to fly and loved flying more than I did. Joe's love of flying was out there, and now I know he's flying laps around with his wings that he's got. So I can't wait to experience what he's experiencing. But we'd talk sometimes on a daily basis, weekly or whatever, and he'd call me up and say, now, Philip, tell me the truth. Is this true? Is this really what the Air Force is doing, or this what the Russians are doing? And we constantly are talking about what was going on in the flying world. But then, and both Jared and Audra said the things about community, family, and so faith. But, so there's a movie that was made by Joe, or about Joe. And a lot of you have probably heard about it. And it was set in Vermillion, but they changed the town to a place called Bedford Falls. So, what movie that was. It's a Wonderful Life. And Thursday night, Thanksgiving evening, my wife and I watched it, and I turned to him. I said, George Bailey was Joe Edelen. His family was so important, the community. And George Bailey made Bedford Falls. And Joe touched so many lives and made us all better people. So he was George Bailey. And George Bailey was a great man. So I have a quote here from Elizabeth Browning, and it encapsulates the way I feel about him. And it says, I love you not for what you are, but for what I am when I'm with you. And I think we can all say we are better people because we knew Joe.
And I'm Nancy, Joe's eldest sister. Notice that. Tonight I hope to give you a glimpse of our brother Joe's life before South Dakota. I hope to take you on a journey that Joe took. Some of this is repetitive. Joe was born September the 5th, 1944 in Belleville, Illinois. But Joe was conceived in Pierce, South Dakota. Did you know that? And the hospital bill for both mother and child was $83.17. And back then, you had to stay in the hospital at least 3 days. Joe's godparents at baptism were his Aunt Janice Weber and Uncle Neil Edelen. Mother and Joe stayed in Belleville while Daddy flew the hump in CBI, China, Burma, India, during World War II. Then it was in November of '45, the young family moved to Monroe, Louisiana. February of '46, when Joe was just a little over a year old, they headed east to Daddy's next duty station. On the way, supposed to be fun. Joe became very ill. Mother and Daddy stopped at numerous doctors on the way, and nobody could help. The last doctor they stopped at said that he had a new drug if they were willing to try it, and it worked. And that drug was penicillin. They were at Langley, that next duty station, Virginia, until October of '46. Then from October of '46 to March of '47, Mother and Joe went back to Belleville, while Daddy was TDY, while heading to Japan. From April of '47 to November of '49, home was Tokyo, Japan, and the American village, Nagoya, Honshu, Japan. Our grandmother loved to tell the story of her driving Mother and Joe from Belleville to the West Coast to get on this ship that would take them on the week's journey to Japan. When Mother and Joe took off up the gangplank, little Joe squirmed his way out of Mother's grasp, and Grandma from the dock watched Joe just run circles around all those decks on the ship. And she knew Mother was going to have her hands full for that week. Joe lost his only child status in Japan, for shame. 3 siblings were added in Japan, 1 sister and 2 brothers. Joe often told us his only memory was his recollection of Japan was when he tried to give the maid our 3 new car tires for free. And I never figured out why it was 3. Not 2, not 4. Then December of 49 to July of 51 was at Larson Air Force Base, Moses Lake, Washington. Joe went to the 1st grade at Ephrata Elementary in Ephrata, Washington. July of 51 to June of 53 sent them to McCord Air Force Base, Tacoma, Washington. Here Joe attended the 2nd and 3rd grades in Parkwood Elementary, Tacoma, Washington. Joe made his first Holy Communion there at McCord Air Force Base Chapel on March the 9th, 1952. One more brother added. February of 53 through March of 54, it was back to Belleville, while Daddy spent an unaccompanied 1-year tour in Iceland. Joe finished the 4th grade there at St. Mary's Catholic School in Belleville. March of 54 through June of 57 was back west to Geiger Air Force Base, Spokane, Washington. We lived off base again. We were kind of big for housing, in a 3-bedroom home. So Daddy built a bedroom down in the basement for Joe. He quickly got tired of his younger brothers getting into his stuff and got Daddy to put a padlock way up there on the top of the door to keep out the intruders. Joe completed the 5th, 6th, and 7th grades here at St. Charles Catholic School. In the winter of 54, with snow on the ground, Joe sustained his first of several sports injuries / surgeries during lunch recess at school. It was the last tackle before the bell rang. And Joe was left out there on the ground in the snow. Everybody else went to class. And all of a sudden the nun said, "Where's Joe in that desk over there?" Christmas that year was in the basement, in the daylight basement. Joe's bed was moved to the big room and in the large room in the basement in front of the Christmas tree. Joe became a sleepwalker in Spokane. He often was caught doing weird things at night inside the house and even roamed outside on occasion. And I won't tell you what he did. Joe was confirmed May the 9th, 1957 at St. Charles Catholic School. His sponsor was Roy Talmadge, a family friend, and his confirmation name was John. Where's John? There he is. 2 more siblings, 1 brother and 1 sister. Then Joe was off cross country from Washington State to Myrtle Beach Air Force Base, Ocean Drive Beach, South Carolina, from June 57 to June of 59. Our entourage by then arrived late in the afternoon, and we all begged to go to the ocean as soon as we exited the car at the rental house that our grandparents rented for us. Joe was put in charge of the 5 older with one and one only instruction. Guess what it was? Don't get wet. Enough said. Wampee Little River School, Wampee, South Carolina, was where Joe completed the 8th and 9th grades. Some Sundays we got a kick out of all stuffing into our little Renault, parking right in front of church, and piling out, watching everybody stare at us. Next, it was back overseas from June 57 to May 61 to Karamersel Air Station, main site Air Force Base, Turkey. But we lived in Fenerbahce, Turkey, just across the Bosphorus from Istanbul. Again, because of the size of our family, we had to live on the economy. This meant a 3-hour one-way bus ride for our dad to get to work. He usually went on Monday morning and returned home Friday after work. There also was no high school for Joe, so he was sent to General H.H. Arnold High School, a boarding school in Wiesbaden, Germany, for his sophomore year. Before his Christmas break that year, Mother wrote him, no cell phones, none of that stuff, no telephones. I would like 2 heads of celery, please. Off the airplane came 2 crates of celery. Mother had to hustle to find all the American families to pass it out to before it spoiled. Celery was non-existent in Turkey when we lived there. For a whole week during the summer of 1960, Joe was put in charge of the 8 of us while Mother went on a wives' trip to the Holy Lands. And we were all still alive when she got home. For Joe's junior year, he was sent to Ankara Dependent High School in Ankara, Turkey, the capital, to once again board. 2 more siblings were added, 2 boys. Then it was back to the States, to United States Air Force Security Service, Kelly Air Force Base, San Antonio, Texas, in June of '61 through September of '65. Here, Joe went to Central Catholic High School in San Antonio for his senior year, graduating with honors. The final sibling arrived. A brother, by the way. September of '62 through September of '66, Joe left home once again for St. Mary's College, a Catholic seminary in Kentucky, to become a Catholic priest. He graduated with a Bachelor of Arts in Philosophy. During those 4 years, Joe made a big pot of spending money for himself. Mother had let him take her manual typewriter to school, and he advertised that he would type term papers or any paper for fellow seminarians for 10 cents a page. And he quickly learned that he could guarantee correct spelling and grammar, but up the price per page. He did. True story, all of this. The seminary had one large fundraiser every year, and Joe would walk door to door downtown selling raffle tickets, and it surprised him that there was another group of Edelens that lived there, and so he met quite a few, probably very, very distant relatives of ours. And that one year, the grand prize was a color television. Guess who won? And Big Brother Joe couldn't keep it in the dorm. He sent it home. Great brother that year. Less than a month into his 5th year in the seminary, Joe was home. When I asked why, he said, without hesitation, that his first desire was to get married and have a family. So, September of '66 to '67, Joe was back home and enrolled in St. Mary's University in San Antonio, where he earned another Bachelor of Arts, this time in history. That year, I was a senior in high school, and Joe and I both had term papers due the first day back to school. So the last night, the last minute, everybody's in bed, the house is quiet, we're sitting on opposite sides of the kitchen table. Joe had a stack of books from the floor to about here. 2 hours later, he's in bed, his term paper's done, and it was an all-nighter for me, and do you know that brother never offered 1 second of help? And, huh? Nah. Didn't have time. Yeah. That year, Joe got a part-time job at Trinity University Library. where he was blessed to meet his love and lifelong wife, Mary. Thank you.
My name is Chris. I'm one of the youngest, number 8 of 10. And I have a few quick stories to share. First of all, Jared, I don't know about the others that came up here, but I never got compound interest. I came up here, I couldn't drive. I think I was in 8th grade maybe a freshman. No, I guess a sophomore in high school, I guess. Couldn't drive. And I remember going to the A&W, and there was a car hop there who rolled out on roller skates, and I thought, I'm going to get a date because Grease had just opened up at the downtown movie theater. So I went home and I asked Joe, I said, can I get a little advance? And he gave me $5. But I had $2.50 left when the date was over, because I think it was $1 each and then 25 cents for a soda. But then fast forward to 1989, I worked up here 3.5 summers. And fast forward to 1989, and I bought my first house. And I went to apply for a mortgage, and the house was $79,000 in Houston, Texas. A 4-bedroom, 3-bath, detached garage house in 1989. And they asked how much did I want the mortgage to be, and I said $19,000. And they said, where are you going to get the rest? Are your folks loaning you money? And I said, no, I have a $60,000 check from my brother Joe up in South Dakota. So that compound interest bought me my first house. True story. But I worked all day where the other ones were, That's why I had so much money. But a couple of other funny stories. I think it was 1986, and I was in San Francisco, and Philip was stationed at Lakenheath in England, and he was flying F-111s. And I called up Joe and I said, hey, let's go over to London. And we have an uncle buried at Normandy Beach. He was actually a Catholic priest killed at Normandy. And I said, we can do all of that. And so this was right after, some of you may remember, the bombing of Libya. And Philip was on that raid but had to come back. And anyway, if you remember, the French made us fly all the way around France and wouldn't let us fly over. And so we were going across to Normandy, and we had a hotel reservation about 2.5 hours, and there was a huge storm, and we were delayed. And anyway, we get over there, and the French police decided to really question Philip, and we were delayed. So Joe brings out, he thought he knew French, and so he brought out his little French dictionary. It was about 11:30 at night, and we go into this hotel, and he's trying to look through, and he's trying to talk to the girl behind the counter, and she's like, wee, no. And then I said, let's just go find somewhere else. And we turned around to walk out, and in perfect English, she says, oh, did you need a room? And so Philip and Joe and I went up into this tiny little room upstairs, and I think it was either before or after we folded Joe into the hide-a-bed couch. And then we took his luggage and we dropped it out of the 3rd floor window onto Main Street in this little French town. And Joe refused to go get it. What did he do? He picked up the phone, called our mother, and complained about Philip and I treating him badly. And then there was another time we were at home in 715 in San Antonio where we grew up, the younger half. By the way, there's a million pictures of Joe and a few of Greg and Tommy and Nancy, but there's none of the lower five, so we're not sure what happened there. But we, my kids won't recognize it as a computer, but we had the first computer, I think, and Pac-Man had just come out in a cartridge, okay? And so it was Richard and Greg and me and Philip, and I think Paul was there. John, I'm not sure. We were all playing Pac-Man, and our dad, Joe was there, and our dad comes out and he goes, "You kids get to bed." It was about 11 o'clock. He had gotten up to have another piece of cake or something. And so we go, okay. So next thing, it's like 5:30, 6 o'clock in the morning. We've been playing Pac-Man the entire night. And we hear my dad getting up down the hall, and we all run to our bedrooms. And he gets up, and about 15 minutes later, we all come out like we just got up and had spent, slept the whole night. And we finished our all-night Pac-Man tournament, and he was the leader of the pack, I will tell you. And the last quick story I'll share is, like Joe, I have a real love of the outdoors, and I worked in Yellowstone in college, and I convinced him I was going on a fundraiser. Ted Turner has a huge ranch, about 150,000 acres right outside of Yellowstone, and as a fundraiser, you could get an opportunity to spend the day with Ted Turner, and I tried to get Joe to do the fundraiser, but he didn't want to do that. But he said, "I'll meet you there." And so I gave him real direct instructions. And so here's Ted Turner, and this is back when there was probably only 1 or 2 billionaires in the country, and Ted Turner was one of them. And he had spent the day with us, and he had this real cool barn that was redone, and he had this incredible spread of beef and just this whole thing, and he was up there giving a speech, and all of a sudden, and if you know Mary, she's always had a yellow Audi. And Joe took it on this trip, and you can see this thing like 500 miles away coming at you down the road. And all of a sudden, here comes this yellow Audi screeching around and drives about right into the back of this thing. And everybody looks, and I'm just like cowering down because it's Joe driving into the deal, and he had no idea, but Ted Turner's up there talking about his vision to create a land bridge from Mexico to Canada that he would own. And Joe just came right in there and broke up the party. But we had a great trip and lots of great memories. But he did buy me my first house, so.
Really quick, sorry. And also before you sit down, did you plan the matching today? Because I've learned a few things this evening. One is that, man, your parents must have been cool people, the Edelen parents. And also, you all have the same face. And match. I'm going to leave the mic open for a little bit, but I wanted to give Paul a chance to sing one more song for you all, if that's okay, to kind of close out the service part of this. And when it's done, feel free to keep sharing your memories and speaking. The mic will stay open for that. And food, yes. And also, there's food downstairs and piles of cookies. And you can eat whichever first you prefer, too. So as soon as you're done here, the food will be available downstairs. But thank you all for coming. I invite you to go in peace to love and serve God. Thank you, Paul. Thanks for being here.
It is on. I'm going to steal the mic very briefly. And before I sing I Surrender All, which Joe had requested to finish off the whole thing, according to Mary. But as Pastor Katie mentioned, the song that I sang earlier was the song that Joe and I worked on when I taught him voice lessons 2007, 2008, when I taught here at USD. And when Mary said, "You can sing a second song," I was going through my head and I was thinking, what would be appropriate? And as a teacher, particularly as a voice teacher, some pieces just become associated in your mind with a certain person. And Angels Through the Night was just one that became so associated in my mind with Joe. And coincidentally, I don't think I have assigned it and I've been teaching for 20-some years now. I don't think I have assigned it since I taught Joe until this fall, and I gave it to a student. So And so it was riding in my brain this whole fall, and I thought, what an appropriate way to give a tribute to Joe. When he was working with me, I remember that song, and he was always afraid of the high note in it, and we worked, and he's like, I don't think I'll ever get it. And I said, yo, you will. I'm always very encouraging of my students. And then there was one weekend where he said, well, I'm going to be cantering at St. Agnes, and we don't have a pianist, so why don't you come and play piano? And I said, well, I'm not very good at piano. I play in lessons, but I'm not very good. And he said, well, you're always challenging us to be better, so why don't you come? And thus, the teacher became the student. I've always held Joe and Mary very, very close in my heart, and so it's just such an honor to be able to give back. And I really do feel that he is with us and as an angel watching over us. So I surrender all was his request.